All eyes are on Trevin Wallace as he takes over in the middle of the Panthers defense at linebacker. Is he ready? We'll find out on Sunday, and we'll talk about it right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. And if you feel so inclined, although it's not required to ask a weekly Wednesday mailbag question, you can also follow me on Twitter at Julian Council. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. The Panthers head to Chicago week 5 against the Bears, and I'm sure plenty of Bears fans will be thanking the Carolina Panthers for the Panthers giving them the number 1 overall pick and thus giving them Caleb Williams. But I'm sitting here wondering, and I asked Lauren Cox yesterday on the Locked On NFL Crossover Thursday episode, Lauren Cox, host of Locked On Bears, whether Bears fans are realizing that they got the quarterback decision wrong and that Jaden Daniels is actually the dude they should have taken. And he's saying they're not feeling that way. Well, the Panthers need to make them feel that way after this game on Sunday, as we have had to sit here and watch things not work out with Bryce Young and things work out wonderfully in Houston for CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. And we'll just try to forget about that today. But it's Friday, which means I'm going to give you my 3 keys to victory for the Panthers this Sunday in Chicago at Soldier Field. Number 1, Shaq Thompson, unfortunately, out for the rest of the season with an Achilles tear. Jewell is going to miss at least this game with a groin and hamstring injury, which will linger for the next coming weeks. Whether he's able to play next weekend or not, we will find out as he goes through practice next week, but he's expected not to play, which means it's going to be the first career start for Trevin Wallace and Claudin Cherilus at inside linebacker. But really, we're looking at the rookie Trevin Wallace, who the Panthers took in the 3rd round out of Kentucky. They've talked about his speed, his physicality, his love for the game as reasons why the Panthers selected him in the 3rd round, which was a surprise to a lot of us as we were talking about the Panthers need to get a tight end. Maybe they get another corner. Maybe they go after an edge rusher. All of these discussions that we had throughout the entire month of April and part of March, and they drafted a linebacker. Well, didn't see that one coming, but it looks like Dan Morgan and Dave Canales and Brant Tillis were thinking ahead to what they're going to have beyond this season and knowing that Shaq Thompson is going to be a free agent come 2025 and that they need to look at future options at that inside linebacker spot in the future. Well, it's here in week 5 as Trevin Wallace steps into that spot. I'm excited to see what he's able to do, but he has to step up. Same with Claudin Cherilus. Them playing is not enough. They actually have to be pluses. They have to make impact on the game on Sunday and not get washed away when trying to get through the run blocking of Chicago like it happened a little bit of times late in that game against Cincinnati. Trevin's going to be in that spot the rest of the year. Claudin's going to be there at least this week, but he's going to be called upon a few more times, especially if the Carolina Panthers don't bring anybody else in. Like looking at the 4 linebackers that are available, Wallace, Cherilus, I'm assuming they're going to elevate from the practice squad Chandler Wooten, who's in his 3rd year here in Carolina. And then there's also John Radigan, the lone survivor now of the 6 players the Panthers picked up off of waivers after roster cutdown. Those 4 guys have 111 career snaps, not starts, career snaps in the NFL, and that total is probably going to end up doubling after Trevin and Claudin play on Sunday. So need both those guys in their first career start to be impact players and not just be out there and have a significant drop-off from what we've seen from Shaq Thompson and Josey Jewell in the first 4 weeks of the season. Number 2, Caleb Williams making his 5th career start, and things haven't looked that great so far. I watched the game against the Titans, and honestly, the only reason they won that is because Will Levis leads the league in whoopsie daisies as he does some of the dumbest things you're ever going to see a quarterback do in the NFL, and completely threw that game away, and Chicago's defense was outstanding. But the offense wasn't good. The next week, Sunday Night Football, it's Caleb, it's CJ Stroud, and Caleb did not look good, threw a couple interceptions in that game, and I was starting to think, well, it's only 2 weeks in, but I was expecting more. I was told that Caleb Williams was going to come in with all these weapons on the Bears, and they were going to hit the ground running and be NFC North title contenders. And even on the road against Indianapolis, didn't look great then. And then on Sunday, you get the win against the Rams, a banged-up Rams team, albeit impossibly they're starting to turn a corner offensively. But the Panthers can't let that happen. How can they not let that happen? By finding a way to pressure Caleb Williams. So far, the Bears have not held up in pass protection. They have given up 16 sacks, the 3rd most in the NFL this season. A 10.2 sack percentage allowed, which is 28th in the NFL. Looking at the Panthers, we know this is the worst pass rush in the NFL. They only have 5 sacks, which actually isn't the worst. The Falcons only have 4, but the Panthers do have a league worst 12.8 pressure percentage, which isn't ideal, obviously. Jadeveon Clowney has gotten home. We have also seen Nick Thurman get home before. We've seen Jaden Peavy get home. Like they have guys when there's enough. When the secondary covered a couple weeks ago against the Raiders, they had an opportunity to actually get after the quarterback in those covered sacks, but there really hasn't been too many of those times where just the edge rusher absolutely dominated the tackle or the guard and was able to get in there and get a sack on the opposing quarterback through the first 4 weeks of the season, which is not what we want to see here in Carolina, but it is reality. And also the reality is that Caleb Williams so far through 4 weeks is not good when pressured. Looking over at PFF, they had the stats here. When he's been under pressure, by the way, 32.7% of his dropbacks. That's terrible, Chicago. He's only completed 38.9% of his passes for 135 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, has a 33.9 passer rating. When kept clean, he's completed 69.5% of his passes for 652 yards, a touchdown, an interception, and an 85.1 passer rating. So he's significantly more accurate when he's kept clean. But when he's under pressure, he is bad, and he's making mistakes. The Panthers have to put pressure on Caleb Williams. That means sending more blitzes than they have the first couple weeks. Gerald Verrill, get on it. If it means Charles Harris or DJ Johnson figuring it out finally, or Jadeveon Clowney going out there and making his money, because he's getting paid a lot of money, he needs to do a little bit more as far as edge rushing here on Sunday for the Panthers to win this game. If they get pressure on Caleb Williams, they will win this game, because he has proven when pressured so far, he is not good. Number 3, Chuba Hubbard. You have been outstanding and continue to be outstanding, and you need to be again on Sunday for the Panthers to have success. And it really feels like with the injured Adam Thielen, but still the wide receiver core of Deontay Johnson, who's a little banged up, dealing with an ankle, dealing with a groin. That's something that you kind of concerned about, but he'll be ready to go on Sunday, as Dave Canales told us. We did see how Xavier Legette played on Sunday. He had a couple bad drops, but other than that, it was a really good start for him on Sunday. And to look at Jonathan Mingo also in that spot. Passing game, not concerned about it, but the Panthers are a team that wants to run the football. And since inserting Andy Dalton into the lineup, they have run the ball. Back-to-back 100-yard rushing days for Chuba Hubbard, the first time in his career. He is 3rd in the NFL in rushing success rate at 65.5%. Outstanding. Only Chase Brown of the Bengals and Lamar Jackson of the Ravens is ahead of him so far through 4 weeks in the NFL. If you can have another 100-yard rushing game with Chuba Hubbard, continue to have success throwing the ball off Andy Dalton to Deontay Johnson and the rest of those receivers, the Panthers are going to be in a spot to win. So keep running the ball with Chuba Hubbard. Got to get pressure on Caleb Williams, as he does not handle it well. And Claude and Charles and primarily Trevin Wallace, both of those guys got to hold serve, not have a significant drop-off there in the middle of the defense at linebacker, and be a plus for this defense on Sunday in Chicago. Those are my 3 keys to victory against the Bears. The Panthers had 19 players on the injury report this week. Yikes. Let's go ahead and give an update on where those guys are and how many of them are actually expected to miss the game and how many will actually play on Sunday. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and of course, the old North state of North Carolina. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn those sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Safe to say that it's never ideal when you see 19 players on the injury report leading up to a game here in the NFL, and that is unfortunately the reality for the Carolina Panthers, but it's not as serious as it would appear. And it's football, y'all. We're 4 weeks into this, and that's not even counting training camp and counting the preseason. These guys are going to have some nicks and bruises for the rest of the season that they're just going to have to play with. They're going to pop up on the injury report because they have to do it. Otherwise, Panthers will get fined and potentially lose a draft pick. And you got to know these things because, we're betting on this. Got to know who's going to play. Got to know who to put out there on Prize Picks, who to bet on at FanDuel, and all of that. So 19 players on the injury report this week, which was jarring, but not as serious as it may appear. 5 of those are non-injury related, as in 4 players were rested, like Taylor Moton and Jadeveon Clowney. And then there was 1 player who was out with an illness on Thursday. So 14 other guys actually do have legitimate injuries, or at least things that are nagging them heading into this game. Shy Tuttle, he was limited on Wednesday and Thursday with a foot injury. Remember, the last 2 weeks he has been a DNP, did not practice the last 2 weeks, did not play the last 2 weeks, and he was actually listed as, I think, questionable 2 weeks ago against the Raiders and ended up not making that trip out. And then on Friday of last week, heading to that game against the Bengals, Panthers flat out said, no, he's not going to be available. The fact that he's been out there on the practice field the last 2 days and he's been limited, that has him trending towards being questionable and potentially suiting up on Sunday for the Panthers, which I guess would be nice. Again, he has not been great for Carolina since he came here from New Orleans, and he is a starter. They do expect a lot out of him. I'm curious, with the way that Jaden Peavy and A'Shawn Robinson have played, would that potentially bump Shy Tuttle back? But it's not like Nick Thurman or Deshaun Williams or LeBron Ray really acquitted themselves that well last Sunday against the Bengals. So yeah, Shy Tuttle's probably back in the lineup once he is healthy, which possibly could be on Sunday. Damien Lewis missed last week as a UCL tear. If he was a pitcher or a quarterback, he would be done for the rest of the year and then some, but because he's only a left guard and obviously an important position, he only had to miss last week, and he's been out there limited both days. Did see reports from Alex Zeitlo of the Charlotte Observer, friend of the show, saying that he was pretty intense at practice on Thursday as far as the drills and going in on team period, so it looks like he should be ready to go on Sunday. Chandler Zavala did play really well, though, in that game. Looking back at his pass blocking grade, remember, last year in Seattle, 0.0. He had like a 79.8 on Sunday, and that's back-to-back weeks where he has had a really good pass blocking grade there in the interior. And I think it helps when you have some other veterans out there with you who are healthy and playing well, and that's led to the Panthers having the second best pass blocking rating, according to PFF, so far in the NFL this season. But Damien Lewis trending towards playing this week against Chicago. Lonnie Johnson was a full participant on Wednesday, but was then limited on Thursday, was dealing with a groin. I do wonder if there was maybe a little bit of a setback on Thursday to where the Panthers had to reel things back. He did miss last week's game after suffering that groin injury at the opening kickoff of the second half there in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. The Panthers, though, may get Dane Jackson back this week as he has his practice window opened up. He and Ian Thomas were out there in practice on Wednesday and Thursday. Both of them were limited, and the Panthers definitely do need Ian Thomas back. I know there's a lot of excitement over Tavion Sanders, and I still think that JT Sanders can help Carolina down the road, especially in the pass game. And he's received targets, but as we talked about on the weekly Wednesday mailbag, our listener Kurt was asking what's going on here with the tight end usage in Carolina. Well, what's going on is the tight ends still aren't that great, and the one that you think has the potential to really be a plus in the passing game is a rookie and is probably playing sooner than he needs to, and that's been based on the injuries to Ian Thomas during the preseason and training camp, and same thing with Tommy Trimble, who missed week 1 but has been back since week 2 and out there starting yet again. But Jadeveon Sanders right now, looking at PFF, he is the second lowest graded Panther on the offense. The lowest grade, of course, is Bryce Young, who's been benched. So when you're looking at guys who actually play, he is the lowest graded player on the offense. Got to continue to let him play, continue to let him develop, as that's something that's important. You got Xavier Legette developing right now as Adam Thielen is out with that hamstring injury on IR. You also have Trevin Wallace stepping into a role. You got Jadeveon Sanders. Like, that is positive. 3 guys from this draft class are getting significant snaps. Looking at last year, it was Bryce, Mingo didn't really go great a lot last season, and then they had to throw Zavala out there. Like, this year, like, you're seeing positives from Xavier Legette. Trevin Wallace has been the most impressive rookie dating back to once the rookie class got here back in the spring, and that's been in large part because Xavier Legette has not been available a lot of times during that offseason portion. Now he is back, and we see what he gives this offense, and I'm excited to see how he continues to mature and to grow in this scheme, and with Andy Dalton throwing the football to him this season. Man, but I'm telling you, like, this might be a decent draft class after all these years of wondering, what's up with this draft class? Now, the PFF grade for Jadeveon Sanders not make you feel that well, and we have not seen, of course, Jaden Crumedy so far as he's been on IR. They did not open the window for him, and then also Cha Smith-Wade. He has not been out there yet, as he's been like a special teams guy. They have not asked him to play, as they've had like Troy Hill, who's been healthy, and of course the rest of the corners. Now, Dane Jackson, if he does come back, I don't expect him. He's going to take Mike Jackson's job. Dave Canales was asked about that earlier this week. What would Dane's role be? Would he step in there, or would Mike Jackson still be the guy? And he, of course, is not going to answer that question, as we've gotten to a point where it's now non-answer Dave. Since he benched Bryce Young, doesn't want to answer anybody's questions, which, okay, that's fine. But he did not want to answer that as far as the competitive advantage and all of that. So Dane Jackson, Ian Thomas, both limited. Would be really nice to get Ian Thomas back. Would also be nice to get Dane Jackson back, just to have some sort of depth there, as Lonnie Johnson is still trying to work his way back from that groin injury. And one other thing, too, looking at tight end, important thing to get Ian Thomas back is that Tommy Trimble was not on the injury report on Wednesday, but then did not practice on Thursday with a knee injury. So that is one thing to look at and monitor, as we'll hear from Dave Canales, Panthers head coach, on Friday afternoon, as he'll give us a final injury report heading into Sunday's game, where he'll say whether guys are out, questionable, doubtful, all that. And we'll probably get an update on Tommy Trimble, Shy Tuttle, and the rest of the guys that we just discussed. So it would be nice if Ian, Tommy, and JT are all available to go for the first time this season, as the Panthers head up to Chicago to face off against the Bears. And looking at this game, I'm not impressed by Chicago at all. There was a lot of hype about what this Bears team was going to be and potentially could do this season. And 4 weeks in, I'm not sold. And this feels like a very winnable game for the Panthers. I'm not saying that they should be favorites, but would it be crazy if they were? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your favorite bets and looking at bets for the game on Sunday. The Panthers are still 3.5-point underdogs. The line is holding steady. They're plus 168 money line, and the over-under still right there at 41.5. Earlier this week, it was at 42.5, and looking at how the Bears are playing offensively, I don't think they're going to score a lot of points. I think the Panthers are probably more likely to score high point total on Sunday than the Bears are, just from my observations. I do know the Panthers defense is starting to linebackers who have never started in the NFL before. There is a rash of injuries. That is something to take into account, of course, as you head over to FanDuel. And you'll get started, by the way, on FanDuel with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. I feel like I was told a lot of lies about the Bears this offseason. Like, I was told that they were going to be NFC North title contenders, that Caleb Williams is going to come into the NFL and instantly be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. Like, those feel like things I was sold all offseason long. And yes, they use HBO's Hard Knocks to do it in any chance that they got. And I was told all the time about how the Panthers gave Caleb Williams up when they traded for Bryce Young and gave up DJ Moore. No. The Panthers never gave up Caleb Williams because the Panthers were able to have the number 1 overall pick. They would have traded back and done what the Bears did the previous year when the Panthers traded up to number 1 because, well, a guy like Caleb Williams is available, and a lot of teams out there would have been interested in him and all the other quarterbacks that were drafted in this class. 6 of them, remember, went into the first round. So the Panthers would have made out like bandits had they actually held the number 1 overall pick. So no, they never traded away Caleb Williams, and it's so infuriating every time I hear that asinine talking point from anyone out there who doesn't understand what actually occurred in the trade. I get it. Lost the rights to number 1 overall pick, did not lose Caleb Williams. But even still, Caleb Williams has not been the best rookie quarterback. Not even close. Went over the numbers earlier about what he looks like when he's pressured, even when he's kept clean. Those pale in comparison to what Jaden Daniels has done so far. And we'll see Jaden Daniels in a couple weeks' time up there in Washington. But overall, man, I'm just not impressed by the Bears. And I feel like this is an extremely winnable game on Sunday. And the Panthers may be 3.5-point underdogs, I guess, because they're on the road. But that's a game that I feel like they honestly should win. Even with the defensive questions, this is a better offense than what the Bears are going to be able to put up. And the Bears do have a better defense than the Panthers, but I don't think their defense is so much better to where it's going to have that big of an impact where Carolina loses this game against a team that really has a tough time scoring. And looking at the Bears' offensive EPA stats, they're 26th overall. They're 26th passing offense and in the 25th running offense, all according to EPA. Looking at just some of the basic stats, they are 30th in net yards per pass attempt at 4.2 and then 31st in yards per rush attempt at 3.5. They have only scored on 29.5% of their drives. It's 27th in the NFL. And now if you look at the Panthers, they're 26th in the NFL at 29.8%. But understand that a lot of that was when Bryce Young was the quarterback. They have been much better the last 2 weeks. So clearly the Panthers have a better offense heading into this game. And the Bears offense is one of the worst in the NFL with a rookie quarterback trying to figure things out and an offensive line that is trying to get healthy, but also has not been able to protect him so far this season. Defensively, the Bears, yes, they are a lot better. Looking at EPA, they have the number 7 defense in the NFL, the number 2 pass defense, and a number 16 run defense. Now, against the pass, solid secondary. That will certainly be a test for the young guys in Jonathan Mingo and Xavier Legette trying to get open. Deontay Johnson should have no problem as long as that groin and ankle doesn't have him compromised on Sunday. Not worried about him, maybe a little bit worried about the rest of those guys. But 16th against the run, according to EPA, that's middle of the road, like right there in the middle of the NFL, as there's only 32 teams if you did not know. So the Panthers should be able to run the ball pretty effectively with Chuba Hubbard, who again is 3rd in rushing success rate through 4 weeks this season. This feels like a game Carolina should win. And honestly, I'm going to go out on a limb here by double digits. I said it. I don't think Chicago's good. I don't necessarily think Carolina's that good, but I do think Carolina's offense is much better with Andy Dalton at the helm than what the Bears' offense is right now with Caleb Williams at quarterback making his 5th career start. And the Bears' defense is good, yes, but are they good enough to stop the Panthers from running the football on Sunday? No, I don't think they are. I do not think that's the case. So I do think that Carolina is going to win this game, and I'm not often up here saying they're going to win. Don't like to make picks because you guys are jerks sometimes. I could throw it back in my face, but I picked the team to win. Didn't pick against them, so you cannot come back and be mean to me, all right? You can if you want. Go ahead. I can take it, but please. Either way, like this is a game I really do think that the Carolina Panthers should win. So I'm taking the Panthers by like double digits, and maybe I'll put my money where my mouth is and go ahead and do an alt line and have them like plus 9.5. So we'll see. Or minus 9.5, by the way. What do the Panthers? Okay, so also one other thing too, as I was looking at my notes. The Panthers, what they're going to do at the trade deadline, we talked about earlier, it's going to come down to what they do on Sunday and the next coming weeks. And there was talk from Dave Canales, gave that quote yesterday with Lauren Cox about how he does not see Deontay Johnson being traded away. Like, it could still happen, of course, if the Panthers end up not like winning very many games over the next 4 or 5 weeks and are sitting there with only 2 or 3 wins and completely out of the playoff picture. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't really feel like that's going to be the case once we get to the trade deadline. And maybe the best thing for them is to trade him. But right now, let's just focus on what he continues to provide to this offense and how they can continue to grow, and looking at some of the young guys like Trevin Wallace there at linebacker and Xavier Legette and JT Sanders on offense, and worry about the trade deadline once we get to the trade deadline in a month. And the football's here, y'all. Like, let's not worry about the draft and trade deadline. And Schefter puts it out there, so got to talk about it because I was asked about it as well. But I think this is a game Carolina should win. And we'll focus on who gets traded, who doesn't get traded next month. All right, it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on a Wednesday, I'll be back answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me to get those questions into me right now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll be back with you live on Sunday around 5 o'clock as we'll break down the Carolina Panthers win in Chicago.